There is a rule in professional criminal operations. Before you enter camera range, before you step onto a porch, approach a door, or come within 30 feet of any residential security device, you remove everything that can be described: the ring, the watch, the chain. Every marker that connects the image in a camera frame to a real person in a real neighborhood. It is not a suggestion, it is the operational standard. Professional abduction networks enforce it explicitly before briefing their members. The FBI knows this. Every experienced investigator who has worked planned crimes knows this. The man who appeared at Nancy Guthrie's front door at 1:52 in the morning on February 1st, 2026, the man who studied her routines, returned to her street on 3 separate dates, assembled a 25-liter kit before arriving, had then coordinated with at least one other person already inside the house, knew enough to wear a ski mask, dark clothing, and thick gloves. He did not know enough to remove the ring on his pinky finger, beneath the glove, visible as a distinct indentation in the FBI footage that the sheriff of Pima County confirmed publicly he could see with his own eyes, on his pinky finger, visible through the glove. A distinct indentation documented in the FBI footage, confirmed by Sheriff Chris Nanos to NBC News directly. According to what Nanos stated publicly, I look at the same photo you look at and I get it. He also left visible what appears to be a tattoo on his right wrist. In the moment he reached toward the potted plant to obscure the camera lens, in the moment of maximum exposure, the cuff of his jacket shifted. On the skin of the right wrist was briefly visible, and on it, according to what former FBI Supervisory Special Agent and criminal profiler Jim Clemente stated publicly to Fox News, something that looks like a tattoo marking. 2 identity markers, visible on the most analyzed piece of footage in American true crime since the Idaho student murders, on a man who otherwise planned everything. That contradiction is what this video is about, not whether investigators can identify the tattoo, not which theory about who the man behind the mask might be, but what the presence of that ring and that tattoo tells us about the kind of person who committed this crime and whether that person was a professional at all. Before any analysis, any theory, any evidence, we need to understand who this investigation is about. Because the moment she becomes a data point rather than a person, we lose the most important thing about this entire video. Nancy Long Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942 in Fort Worth, Kentucky, according to public records and family statements. She turned 84 years old 4 days before she disappeared. She raised 3 children in Arizona over more than 5 decades, Annie, Savannah, and Cameron, after her husband Charles died on a mining trip to Mexico in 1988. She was 46 years old. She became the mother and the father overnight. She stayed in Tucson. She built a life. She kept going to church, following services online from a church in New York that Savannah attended, kept attending game nights with her family, kept insisting on her independence long into her 80s. Her daughter Savannah said publicly, according to what IB Times documented, "We are blowing on the embers of hope that grandmother has not been found." As of March 20th, 2026, day 48, no suspect has been publicly named. No arrest has been made. The reward stands at over $1.2 million. Before we go deeper, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. Here at The Silenced Case, we do not speculate. We examine the documented evidence, the confirmed official statements, and the investigative patterns that experienced law enforcement recognizes, even when the public hasn't caught up with what the evidence is actually showing. New investigations and case updates every week. If you think the ring and the tattoo are careless mistakes made by a professional criminal, watch this video first, then decide. Hit the like button and tell me in the comments, if a professional kidnapper removes all identity markers before a planned abduction, why did this person leave a ring on his finger and a tattoo on his wrist? Now, the ring. According to what investigators and members of the public noticed upon careful review of the FBI surveillance footage, a distinct indentation or outline is visible on the suspect's pinky finger beneath the black glove. Not a crease in the glove material, a specific shaped indentation consistent with a ring being worn underneath. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed to NBC News on February 17th that he has seen the possible clue and is taking it seriously. According to his documented public statement, "I look at the same photo you look at and I get it. A pinky ring is a specific choice. It is not a wedding band worn habitually on the ring finger, the kind of ring a person might forget to remove because they wear it every day without thinking. A pinky ring is a deliberate piece of jewelry. It is worn intentionally. It carries meaning, status, affiliation, or personal significance in a way that a simple band does not. And it is worn on a finger that draws attention. The question that no coverage has fully examined is this: what kind of person wears a pinky ring to a planned abduction? The answer, according to what forensic behavioral psychology establishes about identity markers in planned criminal operations, falls into two distinct categories. The first category is a person who does not believe they will be identified through that marker. Someone who has calculated, correctly or not, that the ring will not be visible enough on surveillance footage to provide an investigative lead. Someone whose operational planning did not include a granular review of what the camera at the front door would actually capture. The second category is a person for whom removing the ring was not an option, not because they forgot, not because they miscalculated, but because the ring is so central to their identity or so visible in their daily life to people who know them that wearing it is not a choice they make consciously, it is simply who they are. Both categories tell investigators something important. The first category describes someone whose planning had a specific blind spot, who researched the property, studied the routines, assembled the equipment, but did not perform the fundamental operational security step of reviewing their own appearance against what a camera would actually capture. That blind spot is not characteristic of experienced criminal organizations or organized abduction operations. It is characteristic of someone whose planning came from research and intelligence, not from experience doing this kind of work. The second category describes someone whose daily life includes wearing a pinky ring in contexts where people see them regularly. That means the ring is recognizable. Someone who knows this person in their ordinary life knows that ring, has seen it, would recognize it in a description or a photograph. Both categories point toward the same conclusion. This was not operating under professional discipline. Now, the tattoo. According to what former FBI supervisory special agent and criminal profiler Jim Clemente stated publicly to Fox News Digital, in the moment the suspect reached toward the potted plant on Nancy Guthrie's porch, the cuff of his jacket shifted. For a fraction of a second, the right wrist was visible, and what Clemente identified on that wrist appears to be a tattoo marking. According to his specific documented statement, that tattoo, if it is a tattoo, will be able to help them rule in and rule out people. Certainly it will help the public. Former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam, speaking on the Megyn Kelly Show on March 18, 2026, addressed the forensic significance of that tattoo directly. According to what Gilliam stated publicly, documented by Parade and TV Insider, if somebody has been arrested and they have tattoos, they're going to have their tattoos recorded. So there could be a database that recognizes that portion, and somebody just has to put that together. This is the specific investigative pathway that the tattoo opens. Law enforcement databases in Arizona and federally record tattoo descriptions as part of arrest documentation. A tattoo on the right wrist of a male approximately 5'9" to 5'10" with an average build, visible in a specific type of footage at a specific angle, can be cross-referenced against those records. Not to identify the person directly from the tattoo alone, but to narrow the field, to rule people in and rule people out, to take a list of names that other investigative pathways have produced and apply one more filter. But here is the detail that Gilliam himself added, and that deserves more attention than it has received. According to what Gilliam stated publicly, there are a lot of people who get that kind of tattoo, especially in Arizona. It's like a thing to have a sleeve. That acknowledgement from a former FBI special agent who has spent his career assessing evidence is significant not because it diminishes the tattoo as a lead. It is significant because it tells us something specific about the population from which the suspect comes. Not a rare marking, not a unique design with a single possible source. A style of tattoo that is common in Arizona specifically. A style associated with communities that are local, rooted, present in the Tucson area. A stranger from outside Arizona would be less likely to have this style. A person embedded in the Tucson community, someone whose daily life has placed them in the neighborhoods and networks where this tattoo style is common, is more likely. And someone whose daily life has placed them in the Tucson community is someone who could have come into contact with Nancy Guthrie through the normal channels of neighborhood proximity, through service work, through construction, through the kind of legitimate presence in a neighborhood that Laura, the neighbor who lives on the same street, confirmed is constant in the Catalina foothills. Before we connect the ring and the tattoo to the larger behavioral question, there is one more investigative tool that the tattoo specifically activates, and that the coverage has mentioned but not fully explained: the Arizona Tattoo Database. This is standard booking procedure in Arizona and across the United States. When a person is arrested, law enforcement documents their physical identifiers, scars, marks, tattoos, in the National Crime Information Center and in state-level databases. The description includes location on the body, approximate size, and a visual description of the design. The FBI can query those databases with a partial description: a tattoo on the right wrist of a male approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 with an average build, in the style described as black and gray work common in Arizona, associated with the Tucson area. That query does not produce one name. It may produce dozens, but dozens is narrower than the entire population of Tucson. And when those dozens are cross-referenced against the cell tower data from January 11th, January 23rd, and February 1st, and then against the names of construction workers in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood, and against the occupants of the vacant rental property that was cleared days before the crime, the overlap between those lists becomes very small. According to what Gilliam stated directly, somebody just has to put that together. That is exactly what the FBI's analytical teams are doing right now. Every investigative thread is a filter. The tattoo database is one filter. The cell tower data is another. The construction permits are another. The DNA genealogy is another. Each filter eliminates people from the list. What remains when all the filters have been applied is a very short list of names. And on that list, according to everything the documented evidence of this case suggests, is the name of someone who wore a pinky ring and a wrist tattoo to a planned operation because those markers are simply who they are. Now let us connect both markers to the larger behavioral question that this video is built around. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, who spent 25 years investigating kidnappings and violent crimes, said something that has not been examined in the context of the identity markers. According to what she stated publicly, documented by Irish Star and American Tribune, the number one way this case is going to be solved is somebody coming forward who knows him. She was specific about who that someone might be: a girlfriend who gets angry, a family member who finds a moral compass, or someone who wants the $1.2 million reward and decides that amount is worth it. At that assessment, somebody who knows him assumes that the person behind the mask has a social circle, has people in his life who recognize the ring, who have seen the tattoo, who know what that marking means and why he wears it. Someone hired as a professional operative has no social circle connected to the crime. A hired operative is unknown to the target's community. A hired operative does not wear jewelry with personal significance to a planned abduction. Someone who knows Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood, whose name might appear on a construction permit, in a service record, in the memory of a neighbor who saw an unfamiliar vehicle parked outside, has exactly the kind of social circle that Coffindaffer is describing. She has exactly the kind of people in his life who might recognize a ring and a tattoo from the FBI footage and decide the reward is worth making the call. Now let us apply the three-framework analysis this channel applies to every investigation. Framework 1. The experienced criminal who made errors. The first framework proposes that the suspect is an experienced criminal, someone with prior contact with the justice system, familiar with planning and operational security, who nevertheless made two specific errors that experienced criminal organizations typically eliminate before an operation. The first framework accounts for the level of planning, the reconnaissance visits, the backpack prepared in advance, the specific knowledge of the property, the coordination between at least two people. Just all of this is consistent with someone who has planned criminal activity before. It struggles with the ring and the tattoo. An experienced criminal organization briefing its members before a planned abduction would include explicit instructions to remove all jewelry and cover all tattoos. The ring would be removed. The tattoo would be covered with a sleeve that extended to the wrist. These are basic operational security steps that experienced criminal networks enforce. Their absence suggests someone operating independently, not operating under the discipline of a criminal network with operational standards. According to what former FBI Special Agent Jonathan Gilliam stated publicly, tattoo artist Darren Rosa suggested the tattoo style could be associated with gang culture or cartels. But Gilliam himself pushed back directly. According to his specific documented statement, I don't know how he got that from that wrist. The speculation about gang affiliation may be reaching beyond what the footage actually establishes. Framework 2. The person from within Nancy's world. The second framework proposes that the man at the front door and the person or persons who assisted the operation came from within the social world that Nancy Guthrie occupied. Not necessarily someone she knew well, but someone who existed in proximity to her life in a way that provided operational intelligence that a stranger cannot acquire. The second framework explains the identity markers most convincingly. A person who moves through Nancy Guthrie's world in their daily life does not think of their pinky ring as an identity marker that must be removed before entering her street. Because in their daily life that ring is invisible, it is simply what they wear. The ring only becomes operationally dangerous when you understand that a doorbell camera is going to capture your hand in close detail, and that is the blind spot. Not carelessness about the ring in general, carelessness about what the specific camera on Nancy Guthrie's specific door would actually record. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer stated publicly, according to what was documented by JubileeCast, someone who was close to Nancy, a housekeeper, a pool handler, a maintenance worker, is the likely source of inside information. My number one theory is that people with some tangential connection to the household exposed insider knowledge to criminals. This framework also explains what former FBI profiler Jim Clemente described as signature behavior. According to what Clemente stated publicly in his behavioral analysis, documented in the third document reviewed for this video, the ring and the tattoo are not signs of carelessness. They are identity markers that this person cannot suppress, not because they forgot, but because these markers are who they are. They are the part of his presentation that he carries into every room, every neighborhood, every situation in his daily life. And his daily life intersected with Nancy Guthrie's world at some point before February 1st. Our framework. 3. The motivated amateur with inside help. The third framework, the one that the ring and tattoo most directly support, proposes that the person at the front door was not someone with professional criminal training, not a member of an organized network, not a for-hire operative who had done this before, but someone motivated by something specific, financial need, personal grievance, obsession, or opportunity, who assembled a plan from research and intelligence rather than from experience. The third framework explains every identity marker anomaly in the footage. An amateur does not know to remove the ring, not because they are careless, but because they have never been briefed by an organization that enforces operational security standards. Their planning was thorough, the reconnaissance, the equipment, the coordination, because they researched it. But their operational security had the gaps that experience would have closed. It also explains the holster. Former homicide prosecutor Matt Murphy assessed publicly that the holster positioning, front of the waistband, not tactical, is not how an experienced firearms carrier positions a weapon. It is how someone positions a weapon they want to be seen, not used. That is not the choice of someone with tactical training. It is a display choice made by someone whose relationship with firearms comes from presentation rather than training, and it explains the 41 minutes inside the house. According to what former FBI agent Chip Massey stated publicly, 41 minutes is definitively not the signature of a professional operation. Professional abductions are measured in seconds to minutes, where 41 minutes means something went wrong, something that required adjustment, something that produced blood on Nancy Guthrie's front porch. A professional operation does not produce 41 minutes. Each of these three frameworks leads to the same investigative destination. The person who wore that ring and exposed that tattoo was not operating with the discipline of a professional criminal network. They were operating with the planning of someone who had researched the crime and the blind spots of someone who had never committed one at this level before. There is one final behavioral detail from the footage that connects the ring and the tattoo to the larger question of who this person is. He covered the camera with his hand, not with a piece of tape, not with a cloth, with his hand, specifically, with the gloved hand on which the ring is visible as an indentation. He reached toward the potted plant on Nancy's porch and used vegetation to obscure the lens. And in doing so, he brought his right hand, the hand with the wrist tattoo, into the frame at the angle that allowed the tattoo to be briefly captured. Former FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell identified the significance of the camera covering behavior in a different context. According to what she stated publicly, documented by Irish Star, the person at the front door was not trying to break in through the front. He was covering the camera so that people couldn't see the condition Nancy was in when they took her out. He was managing the visual record of her exit, not attempting entry, but that interpretation adds a specific layer to the tattoo and ring question. A person managing the visual record of an exit, whose entire role is to control what the camera captures, brought his tattooed wrist into the frame of that same camera in the act of controlling it. He was so focused on what the camera would show about Nancy that he did not fully account for what the camera would show about him. That is not the behavior of someone trained in surveillance camera defeat techniques. It is the behavior of someone who learned those techniques from research, not from practice. Someone who understood the objective but did not have the physical discipline to execute it without exposing himself in the process. Step back from the individual elements. A pinky ring visible through a glove, confirmed by the sheriff of Pima County himself. A tattoo on the right wrist visible for a fraction of a second, identified by a former FBI criminal profiler as a potential investigative identifier. A holster positioned for display rather than tactical use, assessed by a former homicide prosecutor as the choice of someone whose relationship with firearms is performative. 41 minutes inside the house, assessed by a former FBI hostage negotiator as definitively not the signature of a professional operation. Locks changed specifically on the back of the house, not the front, confirming the primary entry was through the rear, requiring knowledge of the property that only someone from within Nancy's world could possess. And that person, the one who entered through the back, who knew the layout, who knew which cameras covered which angles, was in Nancy Guthrie's world before February 1st, moving through it, being seen, recognized by the same neighbors who now watch the FBI footage and try to place the ring and the tattoo in a face they already know. Every one of these elements is documented, everyone is sourced to a named professional speaking on the record, and everyone points toward the same conclusion. This was not a professional. This was someone whose motivation was personal, whose planning was thorough, and whose operational security had the specific gaps that come from never having done this before. And here is where that conclusion meets the most urgent question of the current investigation. According to what El Balad documented in reporting published today, Sheriff Nanos has completed only 2 7-hour shifts at the Sheriff's Department in the past week, visiting his gym for extended sessions on 4 of the past 5 days. This is not presented here as personal criticism. It is presented because the filters that Gilliam described, the tattoo database query, the ring description cross-reference, the overlap between the cell tower data and the construction worker names, require specific commitment from the office that holds primary jurisdiction. The FBI task force operates from the Tucson field office, but the analytical decisions flow through Pima County, and Gilliam said it directly. Somebody just has to put that together, that somebody is the department with primary jurisdiction over this case, when the ring and the tattoo are still unresolved. The person who wore them to Nancy Guthrie's front door is still walking through their daily life wearing those same markers, and the filters have not yet been fully applied. There is one development from the last 48 hours that this video cannot ignore, because it changes the population of people the FBI is now focused on. Every member of Nancy Guthrie's immediate family has passed a polygraph examination. According to what was documented in the Crime Talk podcast coverage reviewed for this video and confirmed by multiple outlets, family members including Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni submitted to lie detector testing. According to what the former law enforcement professionals analyzing those results stated publicly, all family members passed. The polygraph examiner found no deception. This development is significant not because polygraphs are infallible, they are not, and their legal admissibility is limited. It is significant because it removes the family as a practical investigative focus and redirects the full investigative energy toward the outer circle, the tangential connections, the people who were not intimate but who were present. Former FBI Special Agent Coffindaffer said it directly. My number one theory is that people with some tangential connection to the household exposed to insider knowledge to criminals, not a family member, not a close friend. Someone whose connection to Nancy's world was functional rather than personal, a service worker, a neighbor, a contractor, someone who might recognize the ring because they have seen it on the hand of a person they know, not in the footage, in person. And here is the detail that makes that recognition more likely than the coverage has acknowledged. According to what former FBI agent Steve Moore assessed publicly, Nancy's daily world was small. She did not drive to church. She followed services online. She had limited mobility in the period before she disappeared. The universe of people who had regular contact with her life was not large. Every person in that universe can be identified. Every person whose access to that property was legitimate can be placed in a timeline. And if one of those people recognizes the ring or the tattoo from the FBI footage, if one of those people is now sitting with the knowledge that they know who the man behind the mask is, the $1.2 million reward is the arithmetic that makes that conversation very simple. See, now here is the element that connects everything. According to what Coffindaffer stated publicly, the number one way this case will be solved is someone coming forward who knows him, not someone who recognizes him from a composite sketch. Someone who knows the ring, someone who knows the tattoo, someone who has seen both in person in a daily context and who recognizes them in the FBI footage. That person exists. They are in this man's social circle right now. They may have already seen the footage. They may have already made the connection. The question is whether the $1.2 million reward and the knowledge that they are sitting with information about a crime that has a second elderly woman now missing in the same county is enough to make them pick up the phone. A former FBI agent, Steve Moore, raised the question on the Brian Enton Investigates podcast that gets to the heart of all of this. According to his documented assessment, before you ask who did this, before you ask how they got in, you have to ask how did the person who did this come to know Nancy Guthrie well enough to target her? Because targeting requires knowledge, and knowledge requires contact. These two markers are contact evidence. They are the physical evidence that the person who stood on Nancy Guthrie's porch exists in a real social world, a world where people see them, know them, recognize their jewelry and their ink, a world where $1.2 million is a number with real meaning. The FBI has launched billboards across multiple states featuring the suspect description. The tattoo is documented, the ring is described, and the behavioral profile is being refined. And somewhere, someone is looking at that footage and recognizing something they have seen before. As of March 20th, 2026, day 48, the investigation is active. The task force is working. The DNA is being processed. The genealogy research continues. The reward stands at over $1.2 million. Tips: 1-800-CALL-FBI. Pima County Sheriff, 5203-514-900. Before we close, in the last video, this channel examined who was already inside the house before the suspect appeared at the front door. Many of you asked in the comments what the suspect was doing during those 5 minutes between 1:47 when the camera went dark and 1:52 when he appeared. The behavioral analysis this video has examined offers one answer: he was waiting. Not because the plan required him to wait, but because the person inside, the person who cut the camera, needed 5 minutes to signal that the approach was clear. 5 minutes managed from inside the house by someone who knew the property, who knew the timing, who wore a ring they did not think to remove because in their daily life, that ring is simply part of who they are. In the comments this week, if you had to choose one, the pinky ring or the wrist tattoo, which do you believe is more likely to lead to this person's identification, and why? Nancy Guthrie attended game nights with her family and kept her Sunday church appointments by video. She raised 3 children alone after her husband died. She became a grandmother whose grandchildren crowded around her and covered her with kisses. She deserves to come home. Her family deserves answers. Ori and the person who stood on her porch, wearing a ring that someone in their life recognizes, has not fully disappeared. Because you cannot disappear from the people who know what you wear on your hands. The investigation continues. This investigation has been presented with complete respect for Nancy Guthrie and her family. Every analysis presented here is grounded in official law enforcement statements, court documents, and verified reporting from national news organizations, including Fox News Digital, Parade, TV Insider, Newsweek, NBC News, Irish Star, American Tribune, and JubileeCast. Expert assessments are attributed to named professionals speaking publicly in their own capacity to major news organizations. The frameworks presented are investigative tools, not conclusions about any individual's guilt or criminal liability. No individual has been named as a suspect by law enforcement, and the presumption of innocence applies to every person referenced in this video who has not been charged with a crime. The Guthrie family has been officially cleared by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. If this investigation moved you, subscribe to the Silenced Case, hit that notification bell. Because here we do not speculate, we examine what the evidence actually shows, and in this case, the evidence was never meant to be found.